We fought really hard to get to that point where we can break bread together and live together and respect one another. And it is now coming from the left to break us back down and send us back to pre-60s.
Your point that it now is coming from the left is one that I've been pondering. I think that it's always been the left, that the left, the Democratic Party, everybody says that Lyndon Johnson somehow had this conversion and he stopped being racist and he signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Democratic Party all just changed and they love black people. I don't believe that. I believe that tactics change, that the agenda stays the same, but people adapt different tactics. And that's why last week, and I got a lot of heat for this, for saying, hey, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, they operate the way the KKK operated. The KKK was started in the 1860s after the Emancipation Proclamation. It was the enforcement arm of the Democratic Party. The agenda was to force people to support Democratic politics and to keep black people in a substandard condition here in America. I don't think things changed in the 1960s. I think the tactics changed. You could no longer lynch people. Technology basically eliminated that because now people have phones in their homes. You can call the police. The KKK comes to your house and tries to pull you out of there. You can call the police and they come. You can't lynch people anymore. It's too easy to get caught. We started prosecuting people. So we no longer lynch people, but we do bully them through social media campaigns. You have Black Lives Matter. Antifa, they will come to your home and intimidate you.
They'll take your job.
Take your way of living. Instead of burning crosses, we have burning buildings. And then if you look at the policies that the Democratic Party adopted from the 60s on, the elimination and the destruction of the black family, intentional and so basically we've infused black people, if you just go look at it, we've infused black people with a racist mindset, an anti-black mindset. Instead of the KKK or a white racist person being most likely to use the N-word, it's now us. Instead of the KKK killing us, it's now us killing each other in record numbers in our own communities. It's now, instead of us putting out blackface music or entertainment, instead of white people doing that, we now have rappers that do that and put out these very negative stereotypes about black people, and we celebrate this as our culture. We have been turned into our own worst enemy. We act and have adopted the mindset of the KKK, and we're doing it at the behest of the Democratic Party. And I'm sorry if that pisses people off.
I think it's true, dude.
You know that the Black Lives Matter website said one of their goals was to disrupt the nuclear family.
They're doing it to other races. I don't even know if is it technically, are we different races? I don't know if that's the right word to use, but whatever. But like, I hate saying white people.
Listen.
They say the white knight concept of a guy that's like, I side with the feminists, so I dislike men. Like they're turning men against men in that sense. Or I should be guilty because of my skin color. Like they're trying to turn me against that race or whatever.
Yeah, against yourself.
No.
Is it the Democratic
it's about
Party?
Divide and conquer. It's just about make people racially conscious so that they have negative stereotypes to people based on race. I don't think, there's a lot of like alt-right people who think that they want white people to dislike themselves or something. No, I think it's just divide and conquer. They don't care who hates who as long as people don't like each other. That way the heat is taken off the establishment. I think it started with Occupy Wall Street. Because I remember my first real encounter with the critical race theory crazies was at Occupy. And it was like after I saw conservatives and libertarians down there, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. But then it went straight up progressive stack.
It really started with 9/11, where they turned us against the Middle Eastern people.
No, that
and
unified
the skin
us.
color. Well, they unified white
America.
skinned people against dark skinned people.
It wasn't about race, though.
It kind of was. It was about religion. They were like, Muslims are dangerous. But then it was who's Muslim primarily in the world? It's people in the Middle East.
The target of 9/11 after this was Saddam Hussein and the Taliban.
Yeah, but they made us afraid of a certain people first, like the xenophobia.
It was a target of a country and the idea of terrorism. They unified this country against its perceived enemy, terror. And so there was no heat on the establishment. George W. Bush's approval rating skyrocketed This country came together in anger in a direction the establishment could weaponize.
But we did.
Ian, let me ask you this before you go. Are you sure it's any different? And I'm asking, I don't know. The Japanese were responsible, or we say for Pearl Harbor. 9/11, they flew planes into the building. I can't be mad at the Middle East people or Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden for flying those planes into America. I can't be mad at the Japanese for Pearl Harbor. I mean,
well, those were acts from organized groups, and the anger was pointed at organized
groups. The problem
groups.
is when the Japanese American civilians got thrown in internment camps because the Japanese Empire. So, like, if Osama bin Laden or whoever it was destroyed some buildings as a small group of terror, to go after civilians in our own country in response, I think it was heavy-handed.
Sure, but for the most part, if the establishment can unify this country, but as a weapon against the enemies to empower the establishment, like they wanted to go to war in the Middle East for a variety of reasons. There's strategic positioning around Iran. Then you've got Qatar-Turkey pipeline. There's always an excuse for what's going to rally Americans. But something started changing with mass media. When we had Syria and the gas attack, you had a lot of people on the left saying they didn't believe it. They didn't believe the propaganda against Assad. And then you had people on the right saying there's got to be a red line. It wasn't necessarily the right or the left. We're at a point now where they can't unify us because we're mad at them. And every attempt they make to point the finger at someone else, it just comes right back to the establishment elites because we figured it out. The mask has come off, the curtain has fallen, and we're like, hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. You've been manipulating us this whole time. Listen, 9/11 was a nightmarish scenario for this country. Nightmare. Never forget. And so was Pearl Harbor. And what did they do? They took us at our weakest, when we were scared, when we were angry, and we wanted justice. And many of us were emotional. I was just a kid. And they said, it was that guy who did it. Go kill him. And we said, yes, sir. For America, we will have justice. And then we realized it was fake. It was a lie. They tricked us. They sent us overseas, this nation, to Iraq and Afghanistan for what? There were no weapons of mass destruction. They weren't involved. It was a lie. They manipulated us at our weakest moment. That's what they do. And now people are finally realizing we are done with this.
And so are we
So they elected a reality TV guy.
Well, but I want to ask this because, and this is where I disagree with a lot of people. I think the siege at the Capitol is the most overplayed thing, this alleged insurrection where I never saw one of these Trump supporters that I've seen draw a gun. And so I've watched Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell basically stand up and they're pulling it off. Oh my God, did you see the Trump people? They tried to overthrow the government, all because we're protecting you. And people are going for it.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at it, I'm like, hey man, I watched all of 2020, people burn down buildings, loot, riot, kill police officers, and they're acting like this thing at the Capitol was worse than what I saw in Minneapolis, Kenosha, Atlanta, LA, the stuff that's going on in New York and Chicago, 9/11. And I'm like, hey man, I've watched the video. I keep looking for this crazy insurrection and I just don't see it.
You remember the officer? I think it was in Vegas. He was just out because there were riots and so he was just standing around, and one of these rioters is walking away and just turns and fires 2 shots and keeps walking, hits him in the head, paralyzes the guy. Why? Yet they don't care about this. They don't care about this.
Right. It's because the centralized authority, another problem about having like Congress people.
But people are going for this Capitol thing.
It's because the people at the Capitol that got most affected by it are the politicians.
Yeah.
And it's because that all that power is centralized in these 450 people that it's so vulnerable that if those guys get messed with, the whole system shudders.
They don't.
Well, what happened to them? I think Tim just said he's from the south side of Chicago. I've been in some neighborhoods in Indianapolis where helicopters, gunshots, kids are traumatized on a nightly basis. Nancy Pelosi had some people in a Wolves uniform coming to the Capitol, and she's acting like she's a kid on the south side that she's been traumatized.
I tell you, man, I used to spend a lot of my time covering conflict around the world. I worked for Vice. I went to Egypt. I was in Ukraine. I was in Venezuela. And I always had people ask me, like, did you train for this? Like, it's got to be scary. People are shooting. I was in Ferguson. People were shooting live ammo. And I was like, oh, no, I'm just from the south side of Chicago. I was like, dude, I went to Ukraine during the start of the Euromaidan movement, which eventually led to the ousting of Yanukovych. And, there was Molotov cocktails. There were guns. I got surrounded by people. I was in Turkey. I went to one neighborhood where a bunch of guys surrounded me, pushed me up against the wall, and held a Molotov cocktail to my face. And I'm cool as a cucumber, man. I'm like, people are like, aren't you scared? We were filming when that happened, too. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just like, dude, in Chicago, you want to talk about growing up with, like, dude, high school fights where I'm from, people had guns. And so people would scream and run. And we were laughing as we were running from the guns. It's like, it's just you grow up in this, man.
Dude, if you're black and we've been conditioned, we go to nightclubs where we have to go through metal detectors to get inside the nightclub. Commonplace. Almost every black night, metal detectors to make sure you weren't carrying a gun. And so we've been conditioned to normalize this. But I'm just looking at this Capitol thing, and I'm going, there are kids in communities that are hearing gunshots every night. Their cousins have been killed. Their uncle, somebody's been shot. He's ganged up and blah, blah. These kids are traumatized on a daily basis, and no one cares. But Nancy Pelosi, and oh my God, she hid under a desk or something. It's like,
it's bad. It is. But Ian's right. It's the nucleus. When that got hit, it shook the whole system.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you why. The establishment elites, the people with power, the politicians, they don't care about you. So
they don't know. They're not there.
No,
they're not getting their windows shot up
I'm
at night.
I'm going to tell you why.
It's true. But
there's some truth there.
Because
it's just like
true.
when I got here today, you told me that there were no police, basically.
Yeah.
And that was something I didn't know.
Welcome to the wilderness, man.
Yeah, that was.
So to clarify, there are cops. But I try explaining this to my very lefty friends who grow up in cities. I'm like, you realize people who live out in the middle of nowhere don't have a local police department to rush to you. Like, you've got to take care of yourself. For me, that's no big deal. I grew up on the south side of Chicago where you pretty much can't trust the cops anyway to do anything for you. And to be fair, a lot of them are bad cops, but also a lot of them are overwhelmed with how crazy things can get. So I get it. And I've always just been like, I got to rely on myself. But to the point about Pelosi, I think, look, they know what's going on in Chicago. They've not experienced it. I don't think they care. I think they hear about it in the news and they're like, yeah, well, what else is new? And then to them, never experiencing it, finally having, I tell you, when I saw some of these videos of like the bumbling and bewildered, older folks walking through the Capitol, and then I see these people panicking and like ducking and hiding, I'm like, really? Like, you've got these pictures of the politicians and they're like laying down, hiding. And I'm like, these people, for the most part, weren't armed. Now, I do think there was some real danger because some of these people seem to have been really nuts, really, really crazy. Many of them, I believe most, were probably just befuddled. Like, the cops opened the door in several instances and people just walked in with little flags and didn't know what was going on. I was surprised to see, there's this meme, it's really funny. It shows these politicians laying down and hiding with gas masks on and it says, these are the people who send your kids to go fight in wars and die.
There you go.
Yep.
And look the other way as bodies pile up in cities all over America. But if a white cop kills somebody black, the whole country shuts down. Everybody takes a knee at arenas and stadiums all across the country, and George Floyd becomes the MLK of this generation. And I just want to add here, I had a cousin that I helped raise, that I loved. I paid for his funeral. Killed by the police, killed by sheriffs in Indianapolis. I am not uncaring about police brutality, but I'm also not a liar. That is not. Again, my father never left the hood, built a brand new house in the hood. He carried a .38. He had an alarm system at his home, and it wasn't to protect himself from the police. Let's quit telling that lie. And the Masterpiece Lounge in the inner city of Indianapolis, my favorite place on earth, my dad's bar. We weren't sitting around, oh, my God, hope I can make it home. Hope the police don't kill me on the way home. When a man walked you to your car, a woman in my dad's bar, it wasn't to protect you from the police. It was from the dudes that walked them streets in that neighborhood. I'll never forget my dad died, and I threw a big party at his bar, the Masterpiece Lounge. My brother wanted to keep the bar, and I was like, Jim, we ain't built for this. We not like my father. We can't. And we're closing it up at 3 a.m. And right outside the back door, 2 dudes are beating the living hell out of another dude. Bottles upside the head and all. And I can remember I told my brother, I said, you think we built to run this business when this is going on every night? This ain't us. We too soft for this.
You know, I grew up with some really bad stories about cops. I've had cops kick the door into my apartment at gunpoint. I've been, while covering a protest in Chicago, surrounded by cops at gunpoint. A lot of just really nasty stuff.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, that's right. Luke was filming it.
They put the gun to my head after I took out the video camera. That's a common occurrence.
So we dealt with this. That was in Chicago. And I'll tell you this, though. I've had some bad experiences, but I've also been saved from a mugging by a group of cops. And a lot of people, I guess, if you don't experience these things, you don't really get it. But I was on the north side of Chicago, and I don't know how old I was. I was like 20 years old. I'm broke, hanging out with my friends, crossing the street, and some dude, he comes up to me and he starts basically threatening me, telling me I got to give him. He asked me for my money. Can I have your money, man? Come on, let me get your money. I'm just trying to do the right thing. And I laugh. I'm like, I don't got any money, dude. I was like, I'm a 20-year-old dude. I'm broke. And so he kept pressuring me. He had a guy following about 15 feet behind, basically a spotter. Something goes wrong. His buddy comes up and helps him. I pull up my empty wallet, literally nothing but an ID in it. And then he's like, I know you got money in your shoe. I know you got money. You think I'm stupid? I got a knife. And then I started laughing. I'm just laughing. I'm like, what is this guy going to do? Is he going to like frisk me? I don't got money. All of a sudden, it's like a split second. I have no idea what happened. I just get like kind of pushed to the side, and this big dude in this overcoat grabs the guy by the front of his collar, spins him around and slams him into a fence and screams in his face, spit flying, "Not in my town!" And then out of nowhere, 2 uniformed beat cops are behind me, and I'm like, what is going on? They pull me aside like, you okay, sir? And I'm like, yeah. They cuff the guy, they take his information. They were like, we've been watching these dudes. We're tracking them, trying to see. We didn't know what they were up to. We're glad we were here. And I was like, cool. It's like, wow. And I have more bad experience than positive ones, to be completely honest. But that was an amazing experience where they shook my hand, told me, everything cool, you're all right. Have a good day, sir. We caught him in the act. We don't even need you as a witness. And I was like, all right. And that was it. Turns out the guy actually lived on the south side, not too far from me, by the way. So it's a funny story. But I think people, get too much of the negative propaganda when it comes to cops because it's shocking and it plays well. It gets shares.
Worldview by anecdotes.
Yeah. Yep.
Rather than data, facts. And we have an anecdote-driven society, and that's very dangerous. And I don't understand why Congress, our lawmakers, haven't focused in. The biggest spreader of misinformation, disinformation, information that makes people it's Twitter. It's not Parler.
Yeah, it's Twitter.
And they never go after Twitter. Jack Dorsey to me is one of the 5 most powerful people in America. Mm-hmm. Who is he? Did we vet this guy? He's not an elected official, but he gets to decide public discourse, the tone of it, who gets to speak, whose voice gets amplified. The guy has an incredible amount of power, and I don't know who he is. And I don't think most of America knows who he is. It seems ridiculous that we're shutting down Parler and no one's looking at Twitter.
And Facebook, too. My buddy posted a video that has it's a clip of Anthony Fauci saying, masks are not needed. They don't do what you think they do. They give people a false sense of security.
It's from I think end of March or April.
And then Facebook masked it and said, this has partially false information. And then it's like, what the?
Fauci was wrong.
It was out of context. It was just a clip. But he was very clear saying, you don't need them. They don't give you the benefits you think they do.
Well, it's old.
It's an old video.
So his position has changed.
Man, he was emphatic. And he's been in the industry for 70-some, or he's 80, 70. So he's been doing this for decades. And for him to not know, after 30 years of serving in this in his position, to not know that masks are effective or not.
Well, now he wants you to wear 2 of them?
Yeah.
And 3.
CNBC wants you to wear 3 of them.
So he spent 20 or 30 years studying this stuff, and then within 8 months, he completely did it a 180-degree turn.
Wasn't there a meme where, you said someone's smothering their grandma with a pillow?
Yes.
It's the only way to be sure.
Are these enough masks?
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.